So good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Kathy Fitzmaurice from the Central Office, and I'll be your host for today's webinar, Small Business Exit Strategies. Your microphones and telephones are currently muted to eliminate background noise during the program. We will take questions at the end of the presentation. To ask a question, type it into the question box on your control panel, or if you have a working microphone, raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon and I'll unmute you. Today's program is being recorded and will be available through WebMQS in the Shared Resources section. I'd like to thank Joe Bottega from our Staten Island SBDC for arranging this webinar. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you so much, Kathy.
Let's go ahead and get started. I'm very pleased to introduce Brian Lincer. He's a business and franchise lawyer with the Internicola Law Firm. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you very much, Kathy, and thank you for putting this together. And a special thanks to Joe as well, Joe Bottega, for putting everything together and giving me the opportunity to speak today on this important topic. I also want to actually thank everyone at the SBDC, those who are listening, those who aren't, because I think what you guys do is probably one of the most important jobs that we have out there, helping our small business owners try to achieve, their goals, which is a really heroic type of employment. So it's really something that you should really be proud of, and it's something that I respect. So I just want to thank everybody at the SBDC. So as part of that, I want to get started. This webinar is actually focused on discussing the exit strategies for small business owners. And as SBD advisors, I think you're in front of a lot of business owners today and on a daily basis, and you see how much work goes into building a business and how much time, effort, money goes into developing it. So the lack of proper planning for business owners as to exit strategy is becoming an increasing problem for a number of reasons. And we'll go to the statistics. So according to the SBA, there are currently over 28 million small businesses operating in the United States. So that's a huge number. 51% of those businesses are owned by people who are 50 or older. And that's an important factor because a lot of these people are going to be looking to figure out an exit strategy in order to retire or kind of move on to something else. So out of the 28 million, 14 million businesses are owned by people who are over the age of 50. According to another survey, 47% of those business owners do not have a retirement plan in place. So there's no 401k or other retirement savings that they have. For the most part, they're banking on the sale of their business to fund their retirement, and they're using the proceeds from the sale to fund their retirement. So having a proper exit strategy is critical. Not only to the individual business owner, it's also critical to our economy. There are actually around 56 million people that are currently employed by small businesses in the United States. So if these businesses go under for whatever reason, it's going to have a drastic impact on our overall economy. So as you can see, it's not only an important issue to resolve for the individual business owner and their families, it's actually a very important issue for the country as a whole. So that's a big part of the problem. So exactly, why is a business plan important to an individual owner? And there's a number of reasons. First, it's going to maximize the selling price. So having a good plan, and we'll go over this in detail as we move forward, but going over the maximizing the selling price is probably one of the biggest components for the individual seller to understand and to try to pursue, because that's, if they're basing their retirement on that, they're going to want to maximize all the value that they can. It also offers flexibility to the business owner, and we'll go through what that means a little later on. It can help establish a legacy, which is very important for some business owners, having the business act as their legacy. It will minimize post-sale exposure, and we'll go into detail on that, what that actually means. But overall, the ultimate goal is to create leverage for the business owner. And once we create that leverage, the business owner will be able to basically do things on their terms. And that's really what the goal is ultimately, is to do things their way, because this is something they're building. This is their property, their asset, and we want to make sure that it's done in accordance to what they want out of it. So that's an important thing. So let's get to maximizing the selling price. So the first thing that comes into play is preparing financials in anticipation of a sale. So as most of us know, the financial, we'll call it the tax returns are generally created to minimize tax exposure. And a lot of the things within the tax return will go for that purpose. Now, as a buyer coming in, looking at a potential business, the first thing they're going to look at is the financial records. So a lot of the, they're going to see a bunch of deductions. They're going to see a bunch of issues on the tax return that generally don't show a profitable, it shows a less profitable business than it actually is. Because if you take out the, the car that's being leased and all these other things that are being deducted, it makes the business look better. So having an eye towards that and having your financials planned and prepared in a way where it's going to increase the value of your business if you're looking to sell it would be beneficial, even if it means you're paying some additional taxes. So the net effect would be ultimately positive if you have to do that. Another alternative is you can actually have the tax returns recasted. So what some accountants will do is they'll take out all those let's say leases, all those perks, and try to show the true value of that company. So that's an important part of it, and that's probably the first thing that a potential buyer is going to look at. So the financial records will actually have a direct impact on the sale price. Because usually what buyers will do when they do the calculation, there's a number of different ways to do the calculation, but they'll take those financials and add a multiple depending on the type of business, and that's how they'll value the company. So if we can get that number up, obviously it would make a big difference later on. So that's probably the first thing that we would want to do. The second thing is we would want to secure the existing contracts that they have. And what that means, there's a number of different contracts, and I'll give you some examples. So the first one would be the lease, or how they're operating the business, if it's a retail business. So if there's an example, if there's two similarly situated businesses, one business has 2 years left on its lease, the other has 2 years left with 2 5-year options. The one with 2 5-year options is going to be much more attractive to a buyer. So knowing this in advance and not having the pressure of an upcoming sale would help out a lot. So this gives the seller the ability to negotiate on their terms and try to get some favorable terms, which they will ultimately assign to the buyer, and ultimately make everything look more attractive, and thus adding value. Another contract that often comes up is, let's say, for example, a license agreement. So if we have a manufacturing company that is licensing a patent or a process in order to make a widget, and we only have a year left on that contract, on that license agreement, that could be problematic because all the values derive from that license. And there's, we represent some companies that have 180 licenses and develop different products based on those licenses. So if you're able to lock in some terms on those license agreements, it'll again look favorable. So if you can turn those year license agreements into 3-year license agreements, you're adding a lot of value from the buyer's perspective, and that's a really important thing. Another example of a contract could be an employment agreement. So a lot of the businesses rely on their employees, and they'll have key employees that run the business, probably, and sometimes are in the business more than the business owner. So when a buyer's looking at this and they say, well, this person's a key person to our company, why wouldn't we want to lock that person in for a few years if we can sign them to a multi-year agreement where we're locking them in? So whatever the case is, and there's a lot of other examples, but whatever the case is, we want to make sure that anything that derives value, any contract that derives value, we want to extend it to the max we can. Thus, it would maximize the selling price of the business itself. So that's an important factor. And again, doing it in a way where we're not under pressure. Once we have a sale in place and the sale, it's ready to close in 2 months, your bargaining position is going to be a lot worse. The business owner's bargaining position is going to be a lot worse in that they're going to know that you're under pressure. So if you have a plan in place and know that you're going to look to sell in a few years, you don't have that pressure, and it makes things a lot easier when it comes time to sell the business. So that's a really important factor. Yet another overlooked thing by a lot of business owners is their intellectual property and customer lists. So similar to the contract rights, a lot of business owners don't know the value of their intellectual property. And I'll give you an example. If there's a business that's been operating under a certain brand for 30 years and they never filed a USPTO trademark application and don't have registration for that, that's going to cause a problem, and that's the buyer's going to question whether or not they're going to be able to obtain the same rights. So looking at this again with the eye towards the sale, we're going to say, okay, let's file the USPTO application. Let's get a registered trademark. Let's try to file certain copyrights for certain materials. If there could be potential patents that we can file for. All these things create value. And if you watch the Shark Tank, that's the first thing they ask is, do you have a patent on that? Is that protectable, or is that do you have a trademark? And that's for a good reason, because without that, you're really not selling anything. You really don't have anything without that, because someone else can just use it. So again, having this plan in place, having an eye towards that, we can kind of anticipate that and hopefully nip things in the bud before they become a problem. Same thing goes for customer lists. Customer lists are very important to a potential buyer. Sometimes, for certain businesses, all you're doing is purchasing a customer list. We had a recent situation where we involved with the sale of an accounting firm. All the person was really buying was the customer list, and they were soliciting those customers. There was really nothing else there. So as a business owner looking to sell it, we're going to want to say, we want to make sure that our customer list is in order, that it's organized, people can understand it, and it again increases the value, as opposed to someone, I've had situations where we have a notebook and some scribble, and it was valueless to us as a buyer. So that you always want to have it organized, and again, it increases the value, having it updated. So putting some money into a CRM system or something like that where we can organize it will go a long way. Again, people don't think about these things until the time comes, and usually it's too late. And that's kind of the focus of this whole webinar, is to make sure make people aware of what they're not looking at now. And another way to maximize the price is add diversity. And what I mean by that is a lot of businesses will rely on one or a few big contracts or clients for the bulk of their revenue, and this creates a problem. So from a buyer's perspective, they're going to look at it and say, well, what if I lose this customer? This one customer who's generating 50% of our revenue, that's going to be a big problem. Red flag goes up. It's riskier. It's going to be, it's going to result in a reduced purchase price. Whereas the alternative being, we have 50 medium-sized contracts, and now if we lose one or two, it's not really going to impact the bottom line. So it looks less risky from a buyer's perspective. And the same thing goes for diversity of actual products or services. There's certain industries that fail, and having all your eggs in one basket it could be problematic and could be a red flag for a buyer. So we would want to, if possible, sometimes it's not possible, but if possible, we would want to widen our product line, or go into something else, maybe add some additional services. Sort of, we're kind of hedging ourselves against a massive loss of one industry where it's going to be a big problem. So it's almost like a fund. Instead of buying one stock, you're buying a whole portfolio of stocks, and it minimizes the risk. From a buyer's perspective, it adds a lot of value. That reduced risk adds a lot of value later on. So that's very important to understand. And then finally, as far as maximizing the selling price, we want to add systems. You know, and by systems, I mean, you know, we want to make the business look as automatic as possible. And I always think about if you read the E-Myth, there's a lot of information on that, and that's kind of what this goes to. So if a lot of businesses rely on one person, the business owner, to do all of the work and do everything, that's going to look a lot less attractive to a potential buyer, as opposed to having, you know, let's say a marketing system in place where it's we're automatically generating follow-up emails and you know, things like that, where, you know, so we're not relying on the one person as much, because from the buyer's point of view, they're going to look at it as purchasing a job as opposed to a business. So we want to establish as many systems, automatic systems, as we can as we go, and that's again going to add a lot of value where you know, the buyer does not really have to be there every day. It's not going to rely on the buyer, and that also goes to the fact that the buyer's a little nervous that the seller is going to take these people, you know, take the one big client or one, you know, and take off with it, or so it all goes to adding systems, adding diversity, and you know, trying to make it look safer for a potential buyer. So those are to me the 5 keys. If we have the time, and we'll get to that later, to make these modifications and have the plan in place, then it goes a very, very long way. I see, you know, from my perspective as a lawyer, I represent buyers, I represent sellers, existing businesses. I see a lot of this happen, and when it's not done properly, it has a drastic, you know, multiples effect on the business, and people are disappointed sometimes at the resulting selling price. But if they're able to, you know, do these things, it will definitely maximize the value. So that's what we mean by that. So now, having the business exit plan, it'll actually also offer flexibility. And what that means is the seller can choose who to sell to. So for one, a lot of actually 1/3 of all businesses are passed down to the next generation. So having this plan in place, if we know this in advance, we can prepare the next generation for, you know, to take over the business, because it's a lot different being a employee of the business and an owner. And those of you who've had that experience understand it's you know, it's a lot different. So a lot of times the second generation statistically doesn't do as well as the first generation. So if we have this in mind and know this in advance, we want to make sure that that we properly train them. So again, the plan is in place, so we have that opportunity. Other instances, we can sell to a current partner. That would having that plan would let us maybe modify the shareholder agreement and say, well, you know, this is the offer, and modify and have an understanding between partners of what would, you know, how the transfer would take place. So that's important. Again, with an eye towards selling it in the future. We have current employees often by businesses. You know, a lot of times they're key employees that take over, and we'll see the importance of why a little later on, why it's important to understand to get a good buyer and to understand what a good buyer is. So we'll address that. A competitor. A lot of times people will sell to a competitor. Now this is important to understand, because now before the competitor is going to purchase the business, they're going to want to look at information. Now we have to make sure that information is secure 100%, because the competitor can use that to their advantage and your disadvantage if the deal doesn't go through. So that's a lot of planning, you know, strategic planning. If there's a, you know, possible competitor that will take over, that's a lot of strategic planning as far as non-competes, having certain information, you know, keeping certain information separate from the information you're disclosing. For example, customer lists. You may not want to disclose that. You may want to prepare a sheet that summarizes the customer list as opposed to giving your whole customer list to your competitor. Things like that. So that's, again, it's still preparation, and it's still at the business owner's discretion when he sells it. You know, the more leverage we have, the more we can choose. And then there's, you know, probably a bulk of it is to third parties. So that could mean something as a, you know, a brand new business owner who has zero experience to a public company that's looking to acquire that. So whatever the plan is, whatever the plan in place is, it's going to be a bit of it's going to be a different strategy. So if you're going to look to sell to a public company, you're going to want to make sure your financials are in order. You're going to call an investment banker. You're going to do different things as opposed to a brand new owner. You're going to want to possibly train them beforehand and things like that. So whatever the business owner wants, you have to effectuate the plan to get them to that point, because the plans are totally different. They're two totally separate things. Even though we're just selling the business, it's a different, totally different, process. So that's important. Then it's also equally important to say, well, how as an owner, how are we going to transfer this business? And what I mean by that is, a lot of business owners, current businesses, like we said, don't have retirement plans in place. They have, they're going to rely on this transaction to be their main income stream. So how are we going to? So what happens, in many circumstances, is there'll either be the seller will offer seller financing, where they're going to want to get an income stream. So let's say let's say half the purchase price is financed. They're going to want to make sure that they have a constant income stream to pay their bills after, post closing. So if they have a 10-year note and 5% interest, that's something that they may need in order to survive. So that's an important thing. It could be rent. If you own the building, if you own the location, and you're selling the business and keeping, signing a new lease so that you can have rental income for your retirement, then that's a good option. But again, it depends on the circumstances. And there's other situations where you can stagger the purchase price. So you can make it, even if there's no note, you can kind of make it almost like an annuity, or invest in annuity, from the business sale, and have that income stream. So whatever the case is, it's going to be at the business owner's discretion. But these are things that they have to think about before they sell the business. And then we have a lot of clients who don't want to leave right away. We have especially professionals, accountants, and things like that. They want to stay on board. Even if it's for a part-time basis, or maybe only during tax season they want to come in. But a lot of people, don't just want to walk away overnight. So you want to make sure you do it in a way that you want to do it. So you want to phase out. You want to work part-time on certain occasions, and then you're able to do that. You can probably secure a employment agreement along with the sale, and kind of have that as part of your income stream, or whatever the case is. So it's really a lifestyle issue. Again, things to think about before you go through the process. So it also, the plan will help create the legacy. So some business owners, like we said, want to pass it down to the next generation, and maintain a family-owned business. So that's great. For a lot of business owners, that I deal with, and my father owned a grocery store for many years. They consider it their kind of their masterpiece. It's something that they take pride in. They put every ounce of effort, all their money into this one thing, and that's the way they look at it. So they look at it as their lasting legacy. So if that's something that's important to a business owner, some people don't care and they just want to sell it and move on and go to Florida. Others are very passionate about that. So it's something to think about, that if you want to keep that legacy, it's something that you have to think about and then plan accordingly. So it's really just a matter of planning. Then I have other clients who like to donate time and the business, whether it be the assets or whatever the case is, to charity, and have that as a legacy. So there's all different things, different strokes for different folks, I guess. But it's really important to understand what that particular business owner wants. How they envision, their legacy at the end of the day, what they want to be lasting. And if you can help create that, that goes a long way. The business plan will also help minimize post-sale exposure. And what we mean by that is it could be taxes. We have to plan. We want a plan that's going to minimize taxes. It could mean hundreds of thousands of dollars different. So if we have time to effectuate a plan, and that could be something as simple as, gifting a certain percentage over the course of a few years, to minimize the exposure, then why would it would make so much sense to do it. But if you're doing it, if you were in a situation where you weren't planning, weren't thinking about it, it's going to be very difficult to kind of maximize the tax benefits of selling the business if you don't have time. And that's again, we want to create leverage. We want to make sure this is something that we're looking at from a far distance if possible. Sometimes it's not possible, and you play the hand you're dealt. But other times, if you can do it, you definitely want to do it well in advance. You want to reduce exposure from creditors, because a lot of business owners have credit lines, credit cards, certain debts that they have to pay. So again, if I know I'm going to sell the business in 3 years, maybe it makes sense to consolidate and get one credit line from the bank, if I can, if that's a possibility, and minimize the interest that I'm paying, and hopefully have a 3-year plan to pay everything off, so I don't really have to use my sale proceeds to pay that my creditors off. So looking at this, a lot of people don't look at it. If you're looking at it 3 years in advance, it's going to go a long way. If you're not, then you're going to just they're going to have their way with you, the creditors, and that's really it. We want to reduce exposure from other contract holders. So we have, as a business owner, you have many contracts in place. Some are very helpful and are required to move on with the business. Others were horrible decisions that you made. So if they're horrible to you, they're going to be horrible to the buyer as well. So we want to make sure that we try to cut off all bad contracts. First, figure out what those contracts are, then figure out ways to cut them off over time. And this way, we have a streamlined business that's going to be attractive. And then reducing exposure from the buyer. So selecting the right buyer is critical. If you're in a position where you have to sell, and it's going to be tough to find that good buyer, we want to make sure that the buyer is, the last thing we want is to be bogged down in post-sale litigation. So we want to make sure that everything's clear in the agreements and everything is exposed. But if you have a bad, people can sue, anyone can sue anyone really. So you just don't want to be bothered with that. So you want to have your choice as to who's going to purchase the assets, if you can. Again, it's all about planning. And if we have the opportunity to plan accordingly, then we want to make sure we can do that. So again, the ultimate goal is always to create leverage for the business owner, and that's really what all this comes down to, where we're able to leverage and dictate. We want to be able to dictate how the sale process is going to go, and who's going to get it, how much money I'm going to get, and things like that. And then, so anything you can do to add to that creates a lot of value. So when should the business exit plan be established? As soon as possible, and this can't be stressed enough. As you probably heard over the course of this webinar, the timing is critical. So if we know 10 years in advance that we're going to, what our exit strategy is, we're going to have to be a long way further than someone who plans it 10 weeks in advance. So I italicized it, I bolded it, I underlined it, and added three exclamation points there, because that's how important it is. So, and I was speaking to Joe Bottega yesterday or the other day, and we were talking about actually doing the initial, doing the exit strategy during the initial plan process. All right, so having an eye towards that, and during the development of the business, if we have an understanding of what the perfect picture looks like for us to get out, it may not always work out, but having that plan in place goes a very long way, and actually will have a big impact on how you conduct your business and who you're dealing with, and so it will actually shape the way you're doing business if you understand what the end game is. So it's really important. Again, I have a lot of active business clients who just say I'm too busy to think about it. It's like anything else. A lot of people don't have wills, don't have this. So it's hard, it's tough to kind of engage them. They're busy doing their day-to-day things, and I understand that. I am too. But part of, I think, being an effective advisor to them is convincing them of the importance of doing it. It's like anything else, having life insurance, having a will, having these things established, because when the time comes, it's going to be too late. You can't buy, life insurance is a lot more expensive when you're older. Why not handle it now? And listen, everybody, I do the same thing. I procrastinate in certain situations, but there's certain things that you can't procrastinate with, and this is one of them. So when you're dealing with the client and want to, and they tell you that I'm too busy to think about it, then just say, then what are you actually working for? You're kind of focused on the wrong thing. So it's important to kind of stress that. And as blunt as it seems, it's a big problem for a lot of business owners. So when you're discussing the business exit strategy with a client of yours or you're advising them, what are some of the things that you want to speak to them about, and at the very least get their awareness to. So we don't necessarily have to build the plan, but we want to build the framework. So one thing is when you anticipate selling. Now this is going to be different for someone who's getting ready to retire versus someone who's just started the business. So the person starting a business, we'll say 30 years from now, the person who's looking to retire is going to say 6 months from now. But so there's different different things you can do during that time, and the factors are going to change depending on when they anticipate selling. And some people say never. So that's we'll have to we just deal with those people. So who do you see taking over the business? Is it going to be a child, a competitor, an employee? You have a key employee that you like that's looking to take over? That's going to be an important factor. Again, all towards building that framework, having that vision. What are your plans after you sell? Do you have a 401k? Do you have another income stream? Do you need that post-closing income to survive? Are you looking to go to Florida? Are you looking to start something else? Maybe it's not necessarily retiring that we're talking about. It could be something just selling the business after 5 years because it's profitable. So what are your plans if you sell? Maybe go back to get a job. Who knows? It doesn't really, it varies depending on who you're talking to. Do you need to maintain an income stream like we've discussed before? That's going to be one of the biggest factors. This is an important one that I like to ask. What are you actually selling? So a lot of business owners don't know the value of their company. So when you ask them that, and it forces them to think about it. Well, I generated a customer list over the last 20 years. That's pretty, it's pretty robust. I guess that's what I'm selling. So then we focus on that and try to, have that as our deliverable when we sell. It could be a number of things, but having the looking inward at the business, we want to make sure that they have an understanding of what they're actually selling. Could just be assets, and they have no goodwill. That's a possibility, but then we'll have to plan accordingly. And along the same lines, what makes your business special? What's your story? Has it been a pizzeria that's been in existence since 1930 and passed through generations? That's going to add value. You may not have that story, but we're looking for a story. It could be something that it doesn't have to be longevity. It could be something, just trying to fix a problem. So again, we're looking inward. It's looking inward, forcing the business owner to look at the business itself. So we want to make, that's an important thing. So so after the business plan is in place, what's the next step? So the first thing that happens once we have that framework, at least we have a goal. We have some sort of pinpoint that we can point to, and there's a saying that that the space shuttle is off 98% off track 98% of the time. So it's all about course correction. So we want to make sure we're correcting the course to get to that destination, and that's all this. A lot of this is about. So we have the goal in mind, and then we can plan accordingly, and then we have a plan in place at least. Then the next step would be to execute the plan. So what does that mean? What does it mean to secure my intellectual property? Well, it could be filing trademarks, filing copyright protection, looking at patents, protecting trade secrets, things like that. Maybe that's the plan. Or it could be, to get into a different industry. So what do we have to do to get there? We have to hire an expert. We have to, do some R&D, whatever the case is. But now we have a goal and a plan to execute. Again, the timing is always an issue because if the longer we have, the better off we are. If we have you know, this situation comes up where the person has a month to sell it, we're not going to be able to do these things. This is going to be gone. So that's why the as soon as possible is so important. And then once you have, you know, once you have the plan in place, the goal, and then you're executing the plan, you hire, you know, professionals, whether it be, you know, my first call would be to an accountant when I come across the situation. Others, you know, or a business broker or investment banker. So we start bouncing things off, even if it's 5 years. I'm 5 years ahead of the game. I want to start planning now because it's going to go a long way. So that's really important, and that's important thing to kind of to understand. So that's I wanted to leave some time for questions because I went over a lot of things generally, and I know you know, people may want to have may have specific questions. But I wrote a book that's called NWise. If anyone wants a copy, as many copies as you need for free to give to your clients to read, whatever the case is, you can contact Samantha in my office. There's her information, and it has some detail. It was written to for the business owner to read who's interested in looking to sell their business, and kind of explains the process, what to expect before, during, and after. So a lot of the details are in there that we didn't really have time to go over, but it may be a helpful resource for a business owner. So if anyone wants any copies, feel free, just shoot us an email and we'll get them out to you right away. But I'll leave it for any questions, anything in particular. Joe, I'm not sure if you want to have.
Brian. Yeah, Brian, thank you so much for your extensive information with respect to exit strategy, which is extremely important. And I can vouch for that because I know in my dealings with small business owners, I don't think in dealing with my small business owners on Staten Island that many of them have an exit strategy. They may, but I just don't feel that we don't have enough of them. And I also think that when we deal with the prospective small business owner, that we should implement in our discussion the importance of having an exit strategy, especially if they're very serious and they're on their way to opening up a small business. Brian, what I would like to ask of you is this. In your dealings with small business owners, have you encountered a number of small business owners that have buyouts, or, you know, on the life insurance and also on the disability insurance buyout piece in place? Because having a buyout for disability gives the business owner more leverage in actually selling the business upon a disability to he or her. Have you encountered much of that?
Yeah, you know, I think the part of the planning goes along with exactly those points. Where if you, let's say, for a lot of times the business will pay for the life insurance for the principals. And it's almost, if you have you know, policy, it's almost like a forced savings in a way. You know, if the situation comes up where it's you know, you're you know, collecting on the policy, it's probably not a good thing, you know, and not a great thing. But really, it's the way I look at it, it's like a forced savings. So it's almost like a 401k, you know, that type of situation where you're being forced to put money away, and over time you accumulate money. And then you have that, you know, you have that cushion. So that's a great option. And the same thing, you know, God forbid a disability happens, you have those, you know, you have that backup there, because like you're getting to is it's nobody really, a lot of people don't have those backups in place. So if you're a business owner and you're disabled, you know, you're gonna have a big problem. You know, there's not too much of a safety net that we have and to rely on. So having these things in place is tremendous, you know.
Yeah. And Brian, too, I think you brought out a very important piece with respect to a retirement plan in place. All too often, and you bring out, you know, quite an observation, many of the small businesses rely upon the fact of the sale to actually foster their retirement, when in reality here, it may not happen so quickly. And if you need to retire, and you have to pass on the legacy over to someone in the business, and you have a retirement plan in place, that gives that business owner more leverage, and, you know, you can have more time to take to craft an exit strategy that will work. So a retirement plan that's feasible, at least give the thought process retirement plan, the importance, the beginning of the business, I think goes a long way.
Absolutely. I really think so. And I think that's it's really it's again, half the business owners haven't even thought about it. But like, you know, but 35% are relying on it. You know, so like and it's just assumed that it's going to be there, and it's unfortunate when they realize that it, for whatever reason, it's not. You know, or you know, and that's really where we want to reach those people and just say, listen, it's important that even if you don't do anything, you don't have to spend money on it. You think about it. You know, have these thoughts in place. Okay, in 20 years from now, what do I expect to happen? You know, and hopefully it works out, you know, the way they want it to, but at least they're thinking about it. You know, so that goes a long way.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Joe, for your question. Does anybody have any other questions for Brian? All right, it doesn't look like we have any coming in. So, Brian, thank you very much for presenting for us. I appreciate it. And
thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to contact me or, you know, anytime.
Thank you so much,
everybody.
Brian. Thank you so much, Kathy.
Thanks. Everyone have a great day.